I'm with Gidon Ariel in Hebron, and today we're talking about a new book called 5 Years with Orthodox Jews by Bob Odell with Gidon Ariel. Firstly, can you explain who Bob Odell is and who you are, Gidon?
Well, I will, first of all, give honor to my friend Bob Odell by explaining who he is first. Bob Odell is a high-tech executive who ultimately retired young because he succeeded in high-tech. And because of his Christian faith, or perhaps I should say his perspective on his Christian faith, which you would say because of what God put into his heart, he searched out Orthodox Jews in Israel to help them with a business because he had been a businessman, and that is what God told him he should do. But instead, he met me, and so instead of doing a regular business, we created RootSource, which is a platform for Israeli Jews and pro-Israel Christians to engage with each other, primarily with the Israeli Jewish teachers, authentic Orthodox Torah teachers, to teach Christians about the Jewish roots of their Christian faith. That's what RootSource is, and we are partners in that. And who am I? I am an Israeli Jew. I was born in the United States, but I moved to Israel when I was about 14, and I'm an Orthodox Jew. But about, 10, 20, 30 years ago, at some point, I discovered the phenomenon of pro-Israel Christians, and God put it into my heart to extend a hand of friendship to them. And so together, between Bob and me, he's a Christian who God put in his heart to befriend Jews, and I'm a Jew who God put in my heart to befriend Christians, and so it was a match made in heaven. And that's what we've been doing for the past 7 or 8 years.
And what is the book about?
The book that Bob and I wrote is called 5 Years with Orthodox Jews. I'll give you a hint. It's not about ice cream. It's about Bob's experiences with the Orthodox Jews that he met in these 5 years. It's been 7 years by now, 7 or 8 years by now, but when he started writing the book, that was what it was called, and the book is mostly a chronicle of his experiences with me and with dozens of Orthodox Jews that he met in his journey with me.
And how long did it take to write this book?
Well, I guess you could say 5 years because he had to experience it before he could write it. But it took him about a year to write it. And then after he wrote it, he had to create a book out of it. So maybe 2 or 3 years it's been in the working.
And why did he want to write this book?
Bob clarifies in the book how he had been a pretty regular evangelical Christian for most of his life. He loved Israel, which is what many Protestant and evangelical Christian, American Christians are. But God put into his heart to go an extra mile. He had been, as I said, a high-tech executive, and he had been coming to Israel. He'd been working for an Israeli company. So he'd been coming to Israel for about 10 years or so. He made about 40 trips here. Wow. But he had virtually not met a single Orthodox Jew, only Israeli non-Orthodox Jews. And he never had spiritual or religious talks with them. But when God put it into his heart, wow, there might be something more than this. I keep on saying God, 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 but that's the way it is. God put our lives together, and we've been best of friends since then. And really, what brought him to write this book is how much his life has changed since he's met us Orthodox Jews. And for the better, of course. It's really deepened his spiritual life, and I'll call a spade, his relationship with his Messiah, Jesus.
If someone wants to understand the Bible, is it important to understand the Jewish culture? So is it important to get to know Orthodox Jews?
People like to say that I cannot be so condescending to people who don't know Orthodox Jews and who don't even recognize the connection that the New Testament, certainly the Old Testament, has with Jews. I think that the Bible is God trying to communicate with us no matter where you are. That being said, the difference between reading the Bible with some understanding of Israel, some understanding of the Jewish people, some understanding of authentic Orthodox Jewish people, and not having that understanding is the difference between day and night. If you come to a place at nighttime and you say, what a nice place. But then if you come during the day and say, wow, what an amazing place. So there you go.
How long have you been connecting with Christians?
It's a hard question. I'm not too, ever since I got married, and probably before that, my memory hasn't been too good. I leave my wife to remember things like dates. but it's probably been at least for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. It started out when I was walking on a street in Jerusalem, and I saw a sign on an apartment, and I crossed the street in order to read the sign, because that's a hobby of mine, to read the street signs in Jerusalem, because you can get a degree in Jewish history just by reading those street signs. But this was not a street sign. It was a sign of an office. It said ICEJ. I wondered what that was. I walked in. It was the International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem. And what it was an organization of Christians who loved Israel, loved the Jewish people, and who wanted to expand that love of their own and expand it amongst other Christians, and to show that love to Jews and Israelis. And that to me was fascinating, because that's not what I grew up understanding that Christians were. I grew up in New York for the first time around. I moved to Israel when I was in high school. But even in those days in New York, there are plenty of Christians. But it's benign. They're just people. You don't think, you pass by a church. You don't go into the church. Who knows what's going on in there? I gave the benefit of the doubt. I figured, okay, they weren't thinking how they could make the next pogrom. But in principle, a Jew growing up today will think that Christians, they are the people who stemmed from the same people who made pogroms, made the Crusades. Not a positive thing. So there I was, seeing an organization that wanted to create good relationships with Jews. It was fascinating to me. And little by little, I reached out to the leaders of that organization and other organizations in Jerusalem, like Bridges for Peace or Christians for Israel, Christian Friends of Israel. And little by little, I actually made friends. Imagine that. People are friendly, and you can be friends with people even if you disagree with them about some things. Imagine that.
What are you hoping the book will achieve?
I don't usually like to have too high hopes, but people who have read the book and have thought about it think that it can really bring this phenomenon, this movement of bridge building between Christians and Jews up to a new level. Because I think that first of all, I really believe that God is doing all of this. And I think that this might be a tool for all of those Christians for whom God is putting into their hearts, reach out to Jews, try to make friends with Jews, try to live with love and respect towards Jews. And they say, but God, how can I do that? So this might just be the how-to manual of how Christians and Jews can start having relations with each other.
Has your relationship with Bob been an important relationship? Is it the divine connection? And has it been a challenge at times as well?
It has definitely been, I definitely feel it's been divine. I mean, my life. So Bob did write the book in order to chronicle his own experience in his life changing in the past 5 years. I started a lot earlier than him, about 30 years ago, and I guess it happened more slowly. But I think that we just have such an opportunity now to really grow further in all of our relationships. For me, it hasn't been so much of a challenge. And that's because I have 5 adolescent children. And so once you go through 5 adolescent children, then it's not a challenge ever to have a relationship with anybody else. Seriously, Bob is a lovely man. And we recognize that you have to go little by little in relationships. I can't really think of anything that Bob could do that could be offensive to me. And I frequently say, if people say, I really don't want to be offensive, I says, listen, if you don't want to be offensive, you can't be offensive to me, because I'm not going to be offended if you're just making a mistake, if you're not familiar with something, really. And so we tread lightly, but like any good relationship, from time to time, we challenge it a little bit. And for the most part, in all of our years together, I don't think we've had an experience that we had to step back and say, sorry, I guess this wasn't the right time. It was just very divinely guided.
Mm-hmm. Is the relationship between Jews and Christians a good relationship today?
Well, there are it's questionable exactly how many, but there are between 10 and 17 million Jews. And I don't know, 1.5 billion Christians? So I have to say that the relationship between those 17 million and 1.5 billion, obviously the question, that's not your question. I think your question is, how is the relationship between Jews and Christians who have a relationship? And the answer to that is little by little, la'at la'at, as we say in Israel. Slowly, slowly, we are going to build that relationship if we want to. It's almost as if you're asking, how is the relationship between men and women? Well, men who want to establish a good relationship with women, who want to establish a good relationship with men, it takes some time and effort, but it comes out worthwhile. And that's what's going on today much, much more. Little by little, more and more people are learning that this is something that they can pursue, such relationships, and they will pursue them, and more people are open to that. And I really have to thank God, of course, and especially I have to thank God for the internet, because the internet has really opened the opportunities a millionfold.
What's your prayer for the book?
I pray that, first of all, our launch party, which is going to be held the weekend of the 24th, I think, of January. I don't know when you're going to be, when this program is going to be broadcast, but I pray that will be successful, and I believe it will be. And I pray that it will reach a lot of people. Like I said, I have low expectations, so I don't know if we're going to sell 100 copies or 1,000 copies, or maybe 10,000, or maybe 1 million. Maybe it'll be a bestseller, and Steve King, look out behind you. But I really think that this is, I really pray more that God will open up the eyes of Christians and Jews. Maybe the next book will be 5 years with Christians that I will write, and that will be the book because that is really something that I'm focusing on more now. I haven't yet started, but I really believe that my job now, my mandate, is not only to be friends with Christians, and I'll never give that up, but to reach out to Jews and say it is our mandate to be friends with Christians as well.
How can people get a copy of the book?
Just look on Amazon for 5 years with Orthodox Jews. And if there's another book by the same title, then buy that one too.
Okay, Gidon, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.